This is regarding 3.6. No, sorry, it's not. I'm in the swing of things. We are 2 guys in SharePoint. What did you say?
3 guys and
3 guys and a
lady
girl in SharePoint.
So the way it works, Darrell, is how's it internet? You got to get the accent right.
How's it internet?
And welcome to 2 guys in SharePoint.
Welcome to 2 guys in SharePoint.
All right, then
welcome to 2 guys in SharePoint.
Then it comes to me and I say the only SharePoint show at Ignite, because SharePoint is sexy again, where everything is not made up and there are no points. Welcome guests, welcome everyone. Welcome
you.
Darrell. Darrell is a Kiwi, we don't like Kiwis.
I like Kiwis.
No, we play rugby, so
I see.
you've got to steer.
I'm
So
controlling.
Are you controlling? All right.
Okay.
Normally my co-host, because they've moved Skype to Teams, there's a problem with native Skype dialing in. So I apologize for the Odd Modlin, the Roderick Modlin, not being on the show. They would have dialed them in, but apparently Skype no longer works. So you need to move everything to Teams if you're having problems. Okay, because Skype is a new team. So a couple of introductions. My name is not Darrell Webster. I'm Alistair Pugin, and I'm a co-host on 2 Guys in SharePoint. And to my left,
Hi, I'm Trevor Hellebuyck. I'm the CEO at Metalogix.
and to my right,
Hello, I'm Heather Newman. I'm CMO and co-founder of Content Panda.
and that guy over there.
Darrell is a service Webster. I am adoption and change management specialist for Office 365, covering various things. I'm kind of everywhere.
Are you struggling?
I am.
Are you sure?
I ran a lot today, dude.
Okay. All right. So Trevor, a little bit about yourself.
So I've been in the industry for about 15 years. I've actually been working with SharePoint and more recently Office 365, really going all the way back to the SharePoint portal server 2001 days. Originally starting more on the consulting services side, doing a lot of project-based work around SharePoint, and then eventually moving over to the product side and really building third-party ISV solutions for SharePoint. And
So you actually wrote code.
I am a developer and architect by trade, despite the CEO tagline.
That's
So
awesome stuff.
do not let that confuse you.
All right. Heather, a little bit about you.
Sure. I've been in the Microsoft SharePoint ecosystem for about 17 years. From Tahoe to today, I was on the original SharePoint marketing team.
Yeah.
Yep. And I had the pleasure of starting the SharePoint conference. That was my baby for about 3 years, along with Jeff Tieper and Nancy McSherry-Johnson. I work a lot in women in technology and women in SharePoint. I was just at the lunch with Damon John, which was amazing and super fun. So ladies, if you're out there, please come. There's lunches every day, and we're in the Destination Lounge in Hall C. So I was a theater major, so I made the leap to technology after college. And I was global SVP of AvePoint for a while. I worked for Knowledge Lake, and now I run my own software business and have a marketing consultancy. So.
But do you want to know who you are, Darrell?
Oh yeah, I'll keep it brief. Yeah, so I'm based in New Zealand. I work for a change management and adoption company, working with Office 365 and various Microsoft technologies. I've had a colourful past. I call myself the Forrest Gump of the IT industry. So Forrest kind of bumbled into different experiences, and so did I, and that's how I got here. Much like how I did eventually arrive on this panel.
You have a segment, so you
I
need to
do.
click the button.
Right, yes.
Okay.
Push the
All right.
button.
So normally we go into our show flow, which my partner Odd Modlin is not here, so you have to drive this, Darrell. You can be quite good at this. So we usually go into a section called In the News.
I'm right. Oh. In the news.
In the news. You do it too, Trevor.
So we want to hear.
Yeah.
I don't have as
Okay,
good as
so
of an accent
Everyone went to
in
Jeff.
the news.
There you go.
So everyone went to Jeff Tieper's session this morning.
But
Yes,
of
no.
course.
Yeah.
SharePoint is cool again. All the Office service versions are coming.
We always knew it
2019.
was cool. It's just cool for everybody else again.
Well, people have been talking about we want to move to the cloud, forget on-premise. And to coin a phrase of a friend of mine, Warren Marks, cloud is not a journey, it's an end state. And that's pretty much where you're going with technology currently. So we know that SharePoint Server 2019 is coming, all the other Office bits are coming around that. And then there was talk about the new sites.
Yeah, that's right. So there are a couple of additional templates. So we had the communications template, which everyone was like, "Oh, it's gorgeous. It means I don't have to hire any marketing people to create stuff for me."
Hey.
Well, it's a start. You've got to start somewhere. But if you want extra stuff, of course, you still involve them. But the point is that there are some other templates that are coming. And now, what were those templates, Al?
We're not going to talk about right now.
Oh, okay.
Everyone can Google, so we're not going to steal Microsoft
Bing.
thunder. Bing.
All right.
Cortana talks to Alexa, so it is okay. We'll be able to ask Alexa to ask Cortana a question, and then it'll be Bing, so that's natural.
Awesome.
Perfect.
There's also some other stuff, superpowers for web parts. We've seen that used quite a few times. Skype no longer exists. Long live Skype. And everything is Teams. The reason why everyone is here, besides the fact that we have Heather on the show.
Thank you.
Button. There we go. You need to
Sorry, yeah,
not
class it up.
squirrel
Yeah.
anymore. So we're here to talk about the impact of Teams on information management and content management practices. So who's used Teams? There we go.
Hey,
in
all
the back there, in the back
Hey,
there.
in the back, what's
Yeah.
up?
All right, so you know how to create a team. I don't know if you have powers to create a team, but generally when you create a team, nobody in the admin center knows where it is, kind of, because they don't know where the content's stored. They know that it creates a team site and a group, but it's very sort of what I like to call information methane with content black holes. And that's why we're having this conversation. Because Teams is what, Darrell? 9, 10 months old?
Yeah, it was released to preview in November.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All
So
right.
yeah,
So not long.
quite some time.
So we really want to talk about the current and the past, because you've still got content in a whole bunch of SharePoint spaces. Let's call it spaces. We're not going to call it sites anymore, because sub-sites is not a word we can use anymore.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You need a clicker, don't you?
I don't need a clicker. You need to.
Okay.
You're
I'll
the clicker.
Yeah.
just wink.
You need to lean in with the arm and carry on.
Okay.
So we're going to look at the impact of Teams on information management, and I think that's very important. How Teams is going to affect the way you plan your SharePoint environments. On premises, yeah,
Well
not
done.
on premise, we've got to say as well as in Office 365. We also want to talk about what you have available to you to manage this better. I mean, we've got contextual help, and we've got Mr. CEO here to talk to us about how to manage all of these things. Okay, next slide, Darrell. I think that works. There we go. So do you want to ask this question, Darrell?
Panel. Oh, no. Okay. That's what it says. No.
That's
Has-
all. That's all of us. In case
That's
you-
right. So panel, because there's a lot of us now. One, two. It's now 2 guys in SharePoint because I'm over here asking the questions. Right. and okay. Has Teams impacted the organisation that you work for? Metalogix and Content Panda.
You want to go first?
I'd love to go first.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. There's no question about it. So, if you look at our organization, we're broken up into what you'd expect of a software company. And, when you think about the effectiveness of collaboration and communication using some of the older tools, email obviously is still the old standby, but it sort of becomes noise, especially in an organization like us with a lot of things going on. We've tried SharePoint with reasonable success, I think. But, at the end of the day, our users are lazy often. So Teams is kind of an interesting paradigm because I think conversational-based collaboration is just sort of familiar for everybody. It's just the way that people talk, people work together. And it's interesting to see the impact. We've rolled it out internally to support our sales organization and our marketing organization. We use it heavily within our support and product development organization as well. And I think it's had a tremendous impact so far. I would say our adoption is pretty immature. We're looking at ways to continue to bring other information into the teams. We certainly leverage Power BI quite heavily. I actually have a background in BI, so it's something that's
Near and dear.
near and dear to my heart. It actually drives me nuts sometimes how unorganized information is within a lot of organizations. So just marrying Teams with Power BI initially is pretty much what we've done. And we're looking at ways to incorporate things like Flow, things like Power Apps, integration with data streams from other applications like Salesforce.com. So we're just getting started, and it's definitely already had an impact just on really transparency. As a CEO, that's kind of a big focus point for me. Employees tend to get suspicious when you're not transparent with information, so it's really been the conduit that we keep the entire organization up to date and really just sharing information and ideas.
And your stuff?
Yeah.
How are you impacted by Teams? Are you impacted by Teams? I think that's the
Yeah,
first question.
absolutely. We are using it for marketing. We're using it for a pricing discussion that we're having. We have, our business is smaller than Metalogix, but we definitely, I finally said to my 2 business partners, I was getting messages in Facebook message, I'm getting things on WhatsApp, I'm getting things on, Signal. I'm like, could we talk in one place, right? And Teams has been really helpful for that with us. We still use the Skype for desktop, the native, which I love, and please don't take that away from me ever. But we use that.
Might be in trouble.
I know. I'm going to be sad at some point. But we definitely use it a lot for that. I love it because I can be at something like this, and I see something or a link or something interesting, and I can take that and just immediately pop it in, get my phone open, pop it in, and say, hey, guys, make sure you're checking this out. Especially for product development and all the announcements that have come out, I feel it's really, really powerful that way. And also, I see it from a client perspective because I do tech marketing for small businesses, and I work with a lot of folks who aren't ready maybe for enterprise software. So I've seen them cobble together, that the S word, the competitor, Slack, and I'm going to say it. So no, but seriously, somebody had to.
Well, because we might have thought of another S word, so thank you for clarifying.
Okay, but
well, there is another S word
well,
from Atlassian, right?
Yeah, maybe.
They've launched a Slack competitor. It's called Strike.
But it's super Frankenstein-y, so it's like you've got Slack, and I'm using Google Docs, and I'm using this, and I'm using that, and it's a pain, trying to keep that all together. And there's really important conversations going on, especially, about product and competitors and stuff. And so I've been trying to kind of get them to think about moving over as a different solution. But Teams is great, and we use it all the time internally.
Right.
Yeah.
Next slide, Darrell.
All right, yeah.
Next slide.
So are you seeing a lot of exposure from your customers? I mean, we know that for the last 10 months, Microsoft, when Teams is the new interface, use Teams. So everyone's been told, like they used to, we'll talk about Yammer now, drink the Teams Kool-Aid around, okay, start using Teams. And customers would generally either flip a switch and say Teams is on or Teams is off. And when you switch Teams on, people don't know what to do. But Microsoft is saying file shares in OneDrive, and that's the official term, which is not right, but we'll go with that for now. And also Teams. So Teams is your interface because there's a bunch of millennials and everyone likes working with apps. So it's a big thing. Swipe right and we don't like an app, give you an app and you can chat. Everyone sits, like you said, on WhatsApp. So we are faced with sort of a departure point right now where for the last 20 odd years, we've been telling everyone, grab your content, stick it in there, give it a name, give it some metadata, tell it that this is what the picture of a lemon looks like so that people can find it. And it's stored hierarchically in your organization. Whereas with Teams, there is no hierarchy.
Well, there kind of is.
Folders. We don't talk about folders.
Sorry. Okay.
But there is no hierarchy. So how do you feel about how that...
Is there a bird? Good call.
It's someone pressed the button. So how do are you seeing that your customers are changing the way they actually work with information?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, I think some of the adoption is still relatively immature, and I think the scary part is a lot of organizations just turned it on. So what we see, just based on sort of historically the types of solutions that we bring to the market, we see a lot of interest in things like governance. How do I manage teams? How do I manage the life cycle of a team? How do I manage all of the stuff that really gets provisioned when you create a team underneath the covers? So we see it more in context of the management aspects of teams, not necessarily, hey, are teams a way to replace some of these legacy systems or processes we have in place? So yeah, I mean, we're definitely seeing a lot of those questions come in, and I think the scary part right now is it's sort of Wild West again, where they've turned these things on, and even an organization our size, so we have about 380 employees, and teams are already starting to go a little crazy. There's duplicate teams. There's, it's starting to become confusion about where should I collaborate and share information. So
it's familiar ground, though, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So if you look at it in a much larger organization than Metalogix, it's going to become a pretty prolific problem very quickly.
Right.
So you seeing, you do contextual help, right? With Content Panda and all of those.
Yep.
Are you seeing an impact? Because Microsoft does not have a 3-year life cycle. They've actually got a 3-week life cycle.
Yeah.
And every 3 weeks you get something new. So you go write a Pluralsight course, and by the end of the 3 weeks you have to rewrite it because it's changed.
Right.
With contextual help experience and the user experience from a customer perspective, are you seeing that impact the way Content Panda builds contextual help for organizations now with Teams?
Yeah, absolutely. We partner with a great partner out of the UK called Combined Knowledge, and Steve Smith and their team, and they're, just like a lot of the others, staying up on it, right? And we're refreshing content almost daily, monthly, and then, depending on, because we serve on premises as well. So I feel like with any of this, it's all about that word adoption, and I think that most people don't do the due diligence that they need to do when you need to adopt a piece of software. So I talk about this a lot. I do a lot of SharePoint Saturdays, and I have a end user adoption talk that I do, and I base it on the fact that I did sort of the first end user adoption campaign ever inside of Microsoft, and it was for Jeff and that team, and we were dog fooding my sites. Dog fooding, eat your own dog food, make sure it's good before you send it out, right? I like champagning better, but that's just me. But anyway, I lived in Sonoma County for a bit. So, but anyway, I think it's really important to put together some sort of adoption campaign, even for something like Teams, because you throw something upon people, right? And then it just goes crazy if you don't put some parameters or some guidance or things like that around it. So with Content Panda, for example, we actually use Content Panda as a way to help somebody do end user adoption with help and training right there, so it's at their fingertips. And if they're going from one version to another, if they've used the lovely Metalogix programs to migrate, we go in before and we go in after, and the Panda's the same. So for us, building content, refreshing it, yes, it's an issue, but if something changes in Office 365, SharePoint Online for us, what's great is that you don't get a big error. A Panda just doesn't show up, and somebody says, "Hey, where's my Panda?" We fix it.
So coming back to you, Trevor, I know there's discussions around. Do you want to lead this, Darrell? I know you haven't been talking for a while. So.
No, I know. Yeah.
He's trembling a little
Is he
bit.
trembling?
I feel like you want to get in the conversation.
I am filling in for someone here.
We're going to add another slide that says Darrell, and then Darrell.
No, I'm fine with that, yes.
So we know that Metalogix is a move, manage, protect organization, and I suppose Teams is going to impact the manage and protect side.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it already has, right?
Oh.
So again, we as we work with our customers, we see a lot of those early sort of requests, that aha moment of, oh, I think I'm creating a problem here. What can we do to address it? We see that just in the way that people move to begin with, right? And I think Office 365 as a whole is having impact where, 3 or 4 years ago in the SharePoint on-premises world, when you move to the next version, you generally wanted to do that as fast as possible. Today, it's more of a journey that's taking time. So if you think about just SharePoint by itself, customers are moving over a period of time. They're also now reevaluating ways that they can take what were really SharePoint sites, in a lot of ways just basic document repositories, and moving that into Teams and creating something that's more contextual around that content. So we see that in the migration straight away. On the managed side, I think there's going to be a tremendous amount of really challenges that exist around how customers manage that data. I mean, if you think about, we talk about this balance of user sort of freedom and control, right? So if we sort of open the floodgates and embrace Teams, it has this level of freedom for users to sort of collaborate the way they want to, but then you have sort of all these security and compliance requirements. If you're in a regulated industry, that creates all types of problems. I mean, you think about a financial services organization that has to consider what the client record is, and now a conversation between you and I within a team, even within the chat, that then gets stored in my Exchange folder, my archive for our Skype communication. Being able to manage all that, what to do with it after that sort of the team has reached its useful life, it's the end of its life cycle, how do I disposition these things? I mean, these are all sort of challenges that I think are hitting everybody in the face very quickly. As they sort of roll Teams out and see, hey, this is very useful, but there's something we're going to have to do to ultimately manage the environment.
Are you seeing the middle of next year with the GDPR coming into play? Is it a big thing?
Absolutely,
okay.
Absolutely. And it's interesting because it's not, at initial glance, you think it's just a issue that affects European organizations. Yeah. It really affects anybody that does business in Europe. Yeah. And absolutely, the GDPR legislation is something that's going to have a major impact, and a lot of organizations right now are getting in front of that and leveraging technologies to be able to govern and secure and lock down that content as well.
So you work in the greater SharePoint space. I mean, we talked about Content Panda. We know that you do a lot of marketing campaigns, and you used to run the best SharePoint conferences
Thank you.
on
I
the
think
planet,
so,
and then it
yeah.
disappeared. Hopefully it comes back next year to Vegas. We won't talk too much about that.
Okay.
But how are you experiencing outside of the content Panda space? What is the impact of your traditional understanding of information management versus where Teams is going with information management? Because now it's chat-based. It's not, okay, I put information in a document
Right.
or...
Yeah, I think I'm on the board of AIM as
Yeah.
well, so I hear a lot about that and the old ECM term, and we were talking about that a little bit earlier. And so I think, yeah, there's a difference definitely in, the buzzwords are digital transformation, right now, right? Right? Okay, yeah. So I feel like we hear that one over and over again right now, and it is digital transformation in a way, right? We went from, like scanning things in paper and all of that stuff. Although if you really look at a lot of customers,
that still happens.
there's still people, like I've been in New York City and been in some old offices, and I'm like, wow, that's where you keep all your stuff, and it's file cabinets, So I feel like something like Teams, definitely, I think it kind of bridges generational as well, because you're right, you have millennials who are like so used to dealing with apps and having conversations about things, and then you've got people who've got the traditional enterprise software collaboration, and I think Teams may be the thing that could actually bridge those things and get everybody working in one place, which I think is really exciting, because people are used to Facebook, right? We're used to commenting, we're used to liking, we're used to dealing with our personal information in that way, so why not take that and really start using it in a business way?
But that's like Yammer, though.
Yeah, sure.
Are we allowed to say Yammer?
Sure.
I
I still think there's a gap, though, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about Teams, it's really sort of water cooler, unstructured type collaboration. I mean, and when you think about traditional ECM, organizations spent millions of dollars to automate one process.
Yep, you betcha.
And if you think about some of these organizations, they were the core sort of process that ran the entire business.
Right.
A claims management system for an insurance
Sure.
provider.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily see that coming into something like Teams yet. I think the tools there, the parts are there.
Right.
But I also think organizations are going to have to look at how they sort of automate those processes.
I think
and
it could be
deal with
connective tissue, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's a bridge. It's not the solution by any standpoint, but I think there's a bridge there that's kind of nice. I think the bridge is kind of halfway done, and I think there needs to be the connections that go in. You know what I mean? That go into it. I think.
Let's
But
just
I-
hope it connects in
Yeah.
the middle at the right spot.
You don't have to jump the
Didn't they
shark.
do that in France and England? Like the tunnel had.
Oh, they did it in South
Right.
Africa as well. They ran out of money on building a bridge. It's still like that in Cape Town. It's the same thing. So coming back to what we were saying about Teams, and 3 years from now, I know you've got a decent product roadmap, and you've got some cool products coming out as well. 3 years from now, with Teams and the proliferation of Teams, I mean, it's like a mushroom. And we've seen that with my sites as well.
Yeah.
Without any quotas, everyone puts a PST in the my site, and back then storage was a problem. I mean, that's what we had, right? Where do you see this? Are you aligning yourselves with where Microsoft is going with the product like Teams, because you manage everything else?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, part of it is that balance of taking what comes out of the box and extending it to create a better management experience. And that's something that we're already working on. We announced the availability of a platform that we've developed called Contently.
Yeah.
So it's very much focused on, it has some migration in it, naturally. We do a lot of migration. But those are more building blocks for, as you manage content, you need to sort of move it or consolidate it into the appropriate location. We're working on things like metadata enrichment, identification and classification of content, which I think Teams really doesn't necessarily address that right now. The metadata support, even though it's a SharePoint site behind the scenes, isn't really there quite yet. Although I don't know that we want it to be there, because then it's perceived as a
That's the next
barrier.
topic of discussion, isn't it?
Well, I apologize that you're on AIM. You're an AIM. What is it that you are on?
I'm a board member.
A board member of AIM. So
You're gonna
for those who don't know who AIM is, what is it? The Association of Image. What is it?
Yeah,
Image.
keep going. Information, image management.
Information
yeah.
image management. So back in '84, when Kodak said there's a scanner.
It's 70 years old, literally.
Yeah.
Organization.
Wow.
So,
Which
so
is pretty badass
That
if you think.
tablets and stone tablets
Yeah,
and
maybe.
hammers.
I carry them.
but AIM was created to manage content, physical pieces of paper, and they're still the governing body. They speak in separate conversations to Gartner, and it gets fed in there. So a couple of months, when was it? Do you remember when that article came out? AIM and Gartner wrote an article together. No, that's the Polymer one. It's a different one. But it might have been referenced in that, I think, where there's a magic quadrant and it says ECM is dead, long live content services. So no longer do we worry about what we're going to end up with SharePoint. It's going to be a search bar, and you find content that way. And we started talking about that at the beginning of the year because your interface is going to be Teams, and you branch out to other things. Like with OneDrive, you can actually scan, you can take a picture, it'll scan, it'll OCR. We can still do that with OneDrive, and there are OneDrive enhancements that was released. I think it was this morning around scanning paper, because it's still real. Scan your expense claim. It will OCR the page, it will despeckle, deskew, deshade, and it will. I come from a paper background.
But they've learned a lot from Office Lens and OneNote in that sense, haven't they?
So do you agree, disagree with the fact that AIM is now saying, and Gartner's following suit because that's what they do, and saying that enterprise content management is not a thing anymore. It's all about content services because we don't know where they're storing it, but we need to give them access to finding it after they've stored it somewhere.
I think it's moved with the way people work, and you have to listen to the way, actually listen to customers. How about that? You know, and how people actually do things. So I think they're taking a step in the right direction by, I think ECM kind of, and I worked on ECM at Microsoft, like with Ryan Duguid before he went to Nintex and stuff, and so lived in that world for a long time doing events, but I feel like it just, we need to broaden that terminology, you know what I mean? Just because it's broader now. It's not just paper, right? Yeah. So I think, content services, sure. I think it's an interesting term. I like it better than the transformation stuff, but I feel like with AIM, I think reaching a broader audience than just the large vendors also in this space, you know, really being able to put out those industry watches that I love, that I, being a member and all of that, being able to, talk about SharePoint in a way where maybe you're a business that isn't Gartner level or Forrester level, but with AIM you can actually get that kind of information and use it. So.
Is that a shameless plug?
Yeah,
of course. No, just a thought around that too. I mean, the information seems to be anchored more in the group that you're working in, the team that you're working in. So there's this place where you go to, and it still can be a little confusing in terms of, right, we need to go to a folder, but really, if we were to form a group here to do a project, that's where I go to. I have that conversation, and that's where I find the content. So it's like they're building it from the ground up again, and not quite dealing with the extra metadata side of things.
Are you seeing an impact around that?
Yeah, well, first of all, I'm not necessarily in love with the term content services, but I think it's a start. It better encompasses sort of the industry today. There's still a lot of that sort of assembly line, content-driven business process that's out there. I mean, take any organization, especially say a retail organization that processes invoices from vendors. They're doing that with paper still today. They're scanning and capturing and kicking off workflows. That sort of exists. I think the problem with ECM is it didn't sort of encompass all of the other sort of business processes that maybe were a little bit more ad hoc, that involve sort of just not random, but ad hoc collaboration between individuals and around content. Those other processes were always very rigid and siloed, and there's all this other stuff that happens in an organization where there's tooling and solutions that should be available that facilitate that level of collaboration.
I think ECM, for whatever reason, that term was just, I don't know if it was sexier or what, but when you talk about other business processes, it's like people talk about ECM all the time, but then, what's the other stuff, you know what I mean? Like it popped up and people latched onto it, I think, in a way. I don't know.
Yeah, there shouldn't be a rigid process to create a proposal for a customer. That's very collaborative and iterative, not something that's step 1, step 2, step 3. So I think you're spot on. I mean, there's all this other activity that happens with an organization where there's content and there's process. It's probably not as formal as we can get on a whiteboard and draw some blocks and triangles to describe it, but it happens every day. There needs to be tooling to support that. I think Teams is a fantastic solution.
Far better than having instructions saying, move document to this folder. When it's done, change the name to version 4.
Or move it to a location and get prompted with 20 metadata fields that are required, and somebody goes, that sucks, I'm going to put it in box.
Yeah. I've been using Planner as well, and I've been doing some speaking sessions on that, and I think that's really a great place to look at a campaign, maybe around building some sort of adoption, so you could actually put the campaign in there and create that there and use that piece of technology as well. So,
all right. So closing thoughts, Darrell. Let's start with you. Teams in the workspace.
Definitely. Yep.
Why?
I think it's because firstly, I'm thinking of the user at this stage. I'm thinking of that simple experience of being able to just get together as a group, and go to Teams, create a team, and get on with working. All your tools are there, and you don't really have to shift from that application. So it's really dealing with the end user experience at that stage and making it simpler. And much that we'd like to get that kind of structure in there for content management, it's good that they're addressing that first.
But it's another app, though. Everyone's going to say that. But it's another app.
It's an app that brings the apps together. That's how I see it.
All right. Your thoughts on?
I like the concept of it. It's very similar to a lot of the things that we've used in the past. And I like that you can do the external, right?
It's now available.
Yeah.
Unlimited
So
Guest access.
that's guest access. That to
Yeah.
me is wicked, because we always have people you want to talk to, a partner or a vendor or whatever, your mom, I don't know, but to be able to bring that in. And that was such a hard thing with SharePoint for such a long time, So that's something that I'm really excited about.
So just on the guest access side, contain your excitement. There's a couple of caveats that you need to have in order to get. And also it doesn't work on iOS yet or Android.
All right, coming soon.
Coming soon,
I'm glad we addressed it, though.
We're
so that's
testing
good.
some.
Yeah.
Coming in mobile apps soon.
Coming in mobile apps soon.
Your take on Teams?
Yeah, I have to agree. I mean, it's sort of that app that brings all the other apps together.
It's
right?
the one killer app.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about even back in SharePoint, I mean, you sort of had to know where to go. There was never, we tried to build directories, we tried to do all this thing, but if you didn't really know where the information was, I can go to a team, it's very contextual, it's organized, hopefully, pretty well, and I think it's sort of that integration point. I can pull in Power BI, I can pull in data from third-party systems, I can have an interaction with somebody that's natural. It's a conversation. So yes, 100% yes.
Maybe Teams is like the Highlander of Office 365. There should be only one.
I don't like to.
So, but it would have to kill other apps, though. Wouldn't
I
it,
know,
to
right?
get their
Is
power?
it doing? Oh, wait, we don't want to say that. No,
As long as it kills Slack, we're okay.
Yeah, see, there we go.
All right,
There
so
we go.
I think that's it from us. Do you have any questions? Yes, no? Have you been listening? At
Yeah,
least-
some content
Do you have a
management.
question? No?
No.
I
He's
didn't-
just,
I
he's
didn't-
just giggling at us. That's nice.
Yeah, I didn't see
You
any
all
questions
are.
on the
That's
Periscope
good.
either, but yeah.
All right, so wrapping this up, we've got 5 minutes, right? 5, yeah. So we'll give you back 5 minutes. Everyone says that on Skype.
Well,
Just
I
so you
have
walk
a
into-
question for Heather. So,
sorry, Darrell.
Oh, sorry.
Wait, let
yeah.
me-
You didn't.
There, yes.
Oh, beep. Yeah, okay. Around Content Panda.
Yes.
So, do you have plans to try and get contextual assistance and help within that environment into Teams?
We do. We're looking into it. Right now, what's interesting about our customers that I've been seeing, and somebody, Tom Ressing asked me about this yesterday. What's the deal between the modern framework and classic, right? And so honestly, I'm seeing a lot of our bigger customers, especially some big, large customers. A lot of them have been staying in classic and they're not moving to modern yet. And so I think that's something that is a big deal. For us, our contextualized help is in SharePoint Online all the way down to 2010. And then what we're doing is we're addressing the sort of different ways people learn by using the different pieces of the product that we use with combined knowledge. So we use their Support Plus product and content for so more of a larger like learning management system, an LMS that you can get to. And then they also have a Training Plus that goes into the ribbon then on the sidebar as well. So we're doing purposefully a bunch of different ways. So contextually, yes, in the ribbon as well, in the sidebar. I'd love to see us have more Office 365 content in context, and that's something
Panda
we're working on.
Panda
No, I know,
bot.
PandaBot. Somebody showed me a Panda. I was like, where's that? But
PandaBot,
I know.
PandaBot,
I was
yeah.
talking to somebody about that too. So definitely a PandaBot.
Integrated into Alexa.
And Alexa
we
and
managed to make
Cortana.
it this far and not talk about bots. So.
I know,
Well, we did, yeah.
absolutely. Yeah.
So what do you think is next for Teams? Now you can talk about bots.
Bots are interesting. I haven't run into one yet that I can't live without, but I think it's a really interesting starting point in terms of what's possible. So, I look at the operations of my own organization and see areas where, man, if we had a bot that could answer the same question that somebody's asked 50 times over, it would be fantastic. There's some interesting things, I think, happening out on the floor. The guys at H3 Solutions, I don't know if you know Joe Harris and Mick Harris, they've announced something called BusyBot that integrates Teams with Flow, which is really cool.
Oh, wow.
I think it has a lot of potential, something worth checking out. But yeah, I think when you start looking at some of these ECM problems and you look at them in a different light in terms of what's available within Teams and how you can solve those problems, I think bots play a critical role.
Yeah.
you know, the examples you see around customer service where, you know, the individual interacts with a bot initially and opens a ticket and then actually integrates an actual human being at some point. I mean, I think the possibilities are limitless. I think we're just getting started, but it's going to be pretty exciting to see.
Yeah.
Alright.
Absolutely.
Are you going to wrap up for us, Darrell?
Oh, I could do, yeah. So
You do it quite well, though. We've done it on Regarding 365. You can now do it on 2 guys in SharePoint.
Oh, right, but it's okay. So it is 3 guys, a lovely female, and
Darrell.
SharePoint. Yeah, it was great talking with you both. Thank
Yeah.
you for joining us.
Absolutely.
And we should grab a coffee sometime and talk a little more about Teams and what you're all doing with that.
That would be great.
So
Absolutely.
you can grab us at 2 guys SharePoint on Twitter. I'm at Alistair Pugin. Their stuff is somewhere else, and we don't care about Darrell. We're on your podcast app of choice: iTunes, Stitcher, TuneIn. You can actually ask Alexa to play 2 guys in SharePoint, and we'll be there. When we're doing video, we actually go across to at Regarding 365, and we periscope through that. And this will be on demand for a small fee in YouTube. And thank you very much for sticking around.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks, guys.